Well, hello and welcome to my latest video on I Want You to Open Your Window Right Now. I'm Sean, and I'm sorry it's been a long time since I recorded. I think the last video I uploaded might have made it to only the YouTube. I'm not sure it made it to both channels, but the last video I uploaded was in February, live from Acapulco, Mexico. I took a little trip down there. But yeah, that I really had a great experience down there, and it was sort of a convention for anarcho-capitalists, organized by a fellow named Jeff Berwick of the Dollar Vigilante YouTube channel, one that I've been following for a number of years. Really, I consider myself in pretty much alignment with the economic view espoused there. Um, that the Federal Reserve is basically a Ponzi scheme and not operating for the benefit of this country. And that a change is going to come. Now, you know, the problem that fellows like us run into is like figuring out exactly what that might look like, and that's the difference between a genius and a smart guy, right? Is foresight. So I'm certainly not a millionaire or anything, so maybe I'm not a genius, but I don't know. Getting ready for change seems pragmatic based on what's going on in the world. But I went down there to Mexico. I also had the death of a very close personal friend and an older guy I'd known for 10 to 15 years, about 15 years of a great friendship, and he got involved in my business, and we really became really just great friends, very much a mentor and a friend and a confidant, and he died of cancer suddenly over a 4-month period. He died on the mid-January. And so, you know, I found myself kind of reeling. So I kind of went to this conference as a luxury. I treated myself for it. It was something I had flagged that I would like to go to if it was a perfect world. And I found myself kind of curled up into a ball in February, and I decided to go for it. Went down there for about 10 days, and I don't know what led me down there, but thank God I went. It was really what brought everyone together was our sort of shared view of that sort of universe about how we need to sort of live not on the banker system, but we need to kind of start organizing under a different set of principles. Um, you know, I've been a libertarian a long time, and thought that maybe we could fix things, but it does more and more just seem like things are too far gone to fix. And the theme of this the conference wasn't all about that, you know, harping about this and taxes and all, you know, whatever. It was more about creating new solutions that will make the current solutions obsolete. You know, that's really what the liberty movement needs to shift to, which is, you know, inventing solutions that make the establishment solutions obsolete. And like I think things like Uber, which can you imagine starting Uber with a business model of going around and seeking permission from all the various regulatory agencies? You know, they would have never gotten off the ground. In other words, they just invented something new. And they said, this isn't a taxi service. It's a ride share. It's different. And they just said, you know, so we're going to do it. We're going to ask for forgiveness later, not permission. They invented something that made the existing model obsolete. And that's why it's a billion-dollar organization. I think Bitcoin is very similar, cryptos in general. Just, you know, we're not going to try to reform the banking system and get people to realize that, hey, it's all based on lies and designed to control everybody from a small group at the top. We're just going to invent new solutions that'll make those solutions obsolete one day. I mean, that's the theme of the conference. And so, you know, it was really music to my ears. It was a perspective that I was right there, but I had never really thought of it in that way. So that wasn't what the conference was about. It was sort of like unifying people who think that way, sort of the libertarian fringe, you know, the freedom movement, as whatever you want to call it, and using that as a jump-off point for exploring ideas for the future. Like, so there was people there that were really into like food issues, sustainability issues, veganism, stuff like that. There were people that were really into like an independent energy future and looking back at Tesla and those sort of things. There were people really there all about the human rights stuff and, you know, things about how, you know, the schools are running, the Child Protective Services gets involved. I met some really good people from the homeschool and even further beyond in the unschool movement that were very inspirational. Shout out to Dana Martin, who I met in person. Great, great person. And yeah, I just really met so many great, fascinating people. And it was about a week, but there was like people hanging out before, there was people hanging out after. It really turns into almost like a month, but I was there for 10 days, and it was just great. And it was a time for me to heal. I took some time for downtime. I had a massage or two on the beach. I, went for walks and stuff. I treated myself to a little downtime, and there I found many like-minded people who I had never really met, or who I, only corresponded with over the past few years. And so I was able to really just unload and be real, drop the mask, and just talk about how I was feeling, and listening to how they were feeling. I just met such an open-minded people. So the format of the conference was really sort of almost like TED Talks were going on, 10, 20, 30-minute talks by about probably 40 to 60 invited speakers over the course of the main conference, 3 or 4 days there. And I think there were 2 stages at times, so you could kind of like go back and forth. And then the real action was out on the patio, beautiful patio at this resort where this place was down in Acapulco. And I think it was called the Mundo Imperial. It was not on the beach, but it was awesome. I stayed there for some of the time, but some of the other time I stayed down at the beach and really relaxed. It was nice. But just the like-minded people and the open-minded people. Excuse me one second here. While you look at my shirt. It was really great, and I really enjoyed getting to know all those people, and I found it very inspirational. And so as such, as I've gotten home and gotten back into my normal routine, I didn't want to focus as much on politics. I started my channel, as you know, it was the height of the election season, and without really meaning to, it kind of became all about the politics. But that's fine. So I do have strong feelings on that subject, and it's a subject that in today's society, you can't just like in a mixed group of people just start talking about stuff, because these people are coming from such a diverse perspective these days. Like you can't really have 10 or 15-minute casual conversations without ruffling feathers, or you have to just wear a mask and just don't talk real, because obviously some people can't handle the truth, like, and that doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's just people these days, they just don't want to hear it. I've always been a guy that likes to talk that stuff, and I can kind of like fisticuff with people without generating a lot of animosity, even in a vigorous conversation, but people, by and large, I feel like they can't do that. So I just figure I'd put it here and stop bothering people that know me, and then I can just, work through these thoughts on my own, and maybe connect with people of like mind, and but then not just make it a part of every conversation. I feel like I want to talk about this stuff. I feel like I want to sort out my thoughts, and I do feel more informed than average. I've been a pretty enthusiastic history reader, and involved in politics since I was a preteen. Really, my mom and stepfather didn't really agree with just zoning out in front of the television, so I think I was allowed to watch basically one program a week, Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, Cosby Show, But the rest of the time I read, and did things like that. And they happened to have a subscription to U.S. News and World Report. So that was a way for me to kind of get some current stuff. I didn't have access to a daily newspaper. So I used to read that stuff throughout the mid-'80s, when I was a kid, and growing into teenage years. So I've always been involved in politics, and I've always read more than I watch television. I've always been into movies. That's something I got from my dad. But anyway, I didn't want this channel to become all about politics. So sorry for the long absence. I was kind of thinking about what to do, how to shift direction. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of like let this continue to be my political outlet for those of you who have been watching. And then I'll just branch out into other channels to do other things maybe as I'm inspired. My wife and I have been getting more involved with like the real food movement, plant-based options when we can find them, and also in holistic health, homeopathy and natural health stuff. And we've also getting a little bit more spiritual lately, as we realize that some of the conflicts that are happening that touch us on political and economic fronts and social fronts, there's some undertones there that are spiritual more than they are just disagreements. I think it's becoming more and more apparent, as do many of the people that I follow and talk to. Sean over at SGT Report, for example, I think I always watch that, and it's becoming their coverage is more and more acknowledging that there is a spiritual undertone to these conflicts. You know, there seems to be a movement of people that's very into death and population reduction and sort of like lowering the standard of living or expectations. You know, it's almost an anti-human, quite frankly. And they're against anything that promotes, you know, the propagation of our culture and species. You know, large families, employment, you know, a religion of any kind. You know, and traditional families of any kind. I mean, I'm an open-minded guy. Everything doesn't have to be my way. Certainly not. As I've gotten older, that's more and more true. But wow, it just seems like the way I prefer to live, it's starting to become almost like controversial. I don't understand, but our culture is definitely in the middle of a transition, and sometimes I think a little back and forth or fits and starts on that front are not unusual. So yeah. Regarding the politics of today, I think I'll give you a little brief update. I'm speaking to you in early to mid-August, and the big headline today, it's a Saturday afternoon, it's down in Charlottesville, Virginia. We've had a big clash, and the typical, you know, cast of characters or characterization of what's happening. We've got these white nationalists, crazy Hitler types, and then these protesters come, and, you know, hey, hijinks ensue. And I'm just really, you know, I have to say, it's very distasteful to watch this kind of stuff. Like, this is an image from today. I mean, just look at this image, you know. This is what they're putting out there. This is what they want you to think, you know, like, of your neighbors, they want you to sort of think that there's a big movement of this kind of thing out there. This is what the outrage, this is why Hillary wasn't elected, because of people like this. I mean, that's nuts, you know. I can't do people not remember what we've been through for the last year or two? I mean, people are out there, and I know a lot of people freak out when I talk like this, but I have to say, like, now that you know that there's people actively out there creating false situations in order to inflame the situation and try to pit you and me against each other, right? There's someone trying to do that. Whatever their reasons are, it's obvious. Now, I'm going to talk to you about that now. And as evidence, I want you to think back to the campaign. I know I covered this in some of my campaign videos, but if you recall, James O'Keefe, as you know, he runs Project Veritas, which basically goes undercover and exposes, you know, these kind of kooky plots, nefarious characters kind of behind the scenes, you know, that orchestrate these kind of things. And during the campaign, I'm going to offer this as sort of some evidence, and then I'll come back to talking about today's events. But as a refresher, during the campaign, James O'Keefe had lots of people that would join as volunteers at the DNC and the RNC. They go undercover, they wear a hidden camera, and they just try to explore what's really going on behind the story. And so this is from one of the reports. I think I gave it some coverage during the campaign, but why don't we talk about it a little bit more now again. And let me blow this up and get it started. I want to introduce you to an organization called Americans United for Change, and Democratic National Committee is funding a group called Democracy Partners. And here's a little reminder of what they're up to from the James O'Keefe video published last summer during the campaign. I'll let it play and then we'll discuss.
Democracy Partners is a private political consulting company with deep ties to Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama's White House, and the Democratic National Committee. Looking at the primary mechanism as a team, Democracy Partners is these tip experiments. Donald Trump and Israel, they have this. Okay. And we have a whole team across the country that does that. Consults. And we have a very, very apparatus from the campaigning. My campaign is to manage all that. Bob Creamer is Democracy Partners. nationalists. He founded Democracy Partners in 2011.
So this is the kind of guy that we're dealing with, right? This is where they get it. And then they found this group, Democracy Partners. And then the next little segment, we'll talk about how they're very close to the DNC. And they work together, although they try to create a few layers of separation. Listen.
Just for orientation, democracy partners is kind of a practice of running themselves. That essentially, Brian different kinds of website. This investigation has revealed compelling evidence of a dark money conspiracy, violation of federal campaign coordination rules between Hillary Clinton's campaign, Priorities USA, Hillary's super PAC, and the Democratic National Committee. So you're kind of like mediators between the super PACs and the DNC. But they can, the DNC, they can't talk to each other. Okay. But you guys are kind of like consultants for not the official entity. So those conversations can be had between consultants. Working for different parts. Okay. That's where there's Bob. There's a primary there. I was saying to him, is a primary to the UFC separately. That's right. So there's like a Morse code between the DNC and the super PACs. And you guys are the last family text conversation. It's like it's kind of like an ongoing express. Okay, so I mean that's a really that's because that's a lot. The thing that we have to watch is making sure there's a double alignment between the actual campaign and the actual DNC and what we're doing.
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is so illegal that we have to make sure that we don't officially touch. I mean, this is plausible deniability. He actually said it.
Attacked on. Vogel and his people trained the agitators to go to Trump rallies, and nothing is left to chance. There's a script. There is a script. There's a script. Okay. There's a script of engagement. Sometimes the crazies bite, sometimes the crazies don't bite. They're starting confrontations in the line. Right? That's very common. The volunteers in the rally is once they're inside the rally, they're receiving services from Trump. They're outside the rally.
So, okay, we've seen enough. I just wanted to, for the credibility of what I'm saying, what I'm arguing to you now, okay, is that's not really relevant to today's story, but what I wanted to remind you is the lesson we learned during the campaign from that investigation. And then you remember these incidents at the Trump rallies where, some guy would be a provocateur. And here's what you remember as a media watcher, that some old man at a Trump rally punched a black guy while he was going up the steps, right? You're left with the impression like, oh, those Trump supporters are so violent and crazy. What they don't tell you is that that guy was like giving the finger right in the face of women and children, causing a huge problem, and that he specifically was deployed there to try to provoke that kind of a reaction. So this isn't a naturally occurring phenomenon like some, African American guy was just there like going, we love Trump, and then they suddenly attacked him. No, this guy was deliberately deployed there by guys like that, to try to provoke that reaction of getting punched in the face, right? And then they go wide with, look, people got punched in the face. Another famous one, and that was covered in my video back during the campaign, was the woman with the oxygen tank. She was walking with an oxygen tank. Oh, I'm disabled, and some guy punched me in the face. That woman specifically was confirmed by that guy Koval as being hired by them to go to that rally for the purposes of provoking that incident. And of course, you never find out what she did to provoke the guy to react that way. So here's what's going on is there's an organization out there, and it was attached to the Hillary campaign, kind of using DNC and corporate money, that's out there trying to put out stories so that they can make happen what they want to happen. What did they want to happen? They wanted you to think that the Trump people were all a bunch of psychopath Nazis that were just wanting to punch black people and disabled people. And so they created that reality, and then they put on a show. It's very Orwellian what they're doing, right? So what I'm telling you now is that I don't know anything about it, right? I can't sit here and tell you that I'm right, all right? But when you see CNN 24/7 covering an image like this, right? Several Nazi flags were seen proudly raised during the controversial rally promoting the removal of a statue of a Confederate general, okay? So when you see that, and they're doubling down, tripling down on the fact that there was 6,000, 8,000 racist, Nazi, white nationalists, white supremacists, right, out there. And then some protesters came, and inevitably it turned into a fight, right? I think that there's people, I mean, look, I was involved in the Trump circle as you could get during the campaign. Like, I subscribed to it all. I was very much following that campaign and talking about it with people all across the world. And I can tell you that opinion, that racist, white supremacist, I've never actually met someone in person who thinks that way. Never. There's quite a lot of criticism of the hypocrisy of like the social justice movement and the PC culture and all that, but never this overt Nazi. And I'm not saying there aren't people like that out there. I recognize that there's some people still trying to keep like the KKK alive, but this is a straw man. And so now that you know, all I'm asking you to do is not listen to me, but look around in your experience. Like the show that you're seeing today on CNN is that the Nazis are out there marching and the liberals are out there marching, and they attacked each other, and isn't everything going to shit? And we've really got to try to restrict free speech to stop this from happening. This is agenda driven. So the people in Washington that cook up these scenarios and push this narrative, they're just doing it a different way. They're not pushing Hillary per se. Now they're pushing chaos, Operation Chaos. So the reason I wanted to make today's political video is because I wanted to tell you, man, like, this isn't, I'm a Trumper. I was. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm worried that Trump is too co-opted by the military establishment, and he's lacking anything else to try to create some unity. He's going with them. I don't like any of this Korea stuff. I don't like any of it. I appreciate him speaking firmly, but I think he should be more firm, but conciliatory as well. And so I'm not necessarily endorsing Trump's actions in every case. Certainly not. But I couldn't abide the continuation of the coalition that was ruling up until last year. That couldn't have continued. So, I mean, I think have at it to criticize Trump. You have no problem from me, but as long as you're intellectually honest. But this image, for people out there that are crying themselves to sleep tonight and saying, "Oh my gosh, there's Nazis out there. It's really bad." I don't think you should feel that way. I don't think there's cause to feel that way. I really don't. I think that there are forces at work behind that are, you notice it's in a place, where is it? It's in Charlottesville, Virginia. They always do this in the country. There's a lot of unemployed people that'll answer a Craigslist ad to make $25 an hour protesting, as they did all during the Trump rallies and campaigns. So don't go off your first world experience. Turn off the television, okay? Open your window and say, I don't want to hear this shit anymore. And go talk to your neighbors and friends. You want to know what I've started doing? 2 days a week or so, usually Friday night and maybe 1 or 2 more days, I'll go out at night, just for a few hours, not during the day, but at night, and I'm driving Uber, and I'm just meeting people all around my city. And I tell you what, this isn't what you see out there. Everyone, you can't judge books by their cover like this. This is ridiculous. And now that now that you're reminded that there are dudes like this guy out there, right? There's guys like this out there trying to fool you, trying to create fake stories. Listen to what he's saying here. They go to provoke people. They're doing it today. Listen to him. Did you hear what he just said? You can message them to draw them out, and you can draw them to punch you. All right? So, I'm not saying I have to be right and you have to be wrong if you disagree with me, but at least consider that there's guys like Scott Koval out there creating bullshit for you to ingest and think the sky is falling. And when I see a photo like this run in every media in the country on a Saturday afternoon and stories of chaos and people fighting in the streets, don't you just think that someone is orchestrating this? Someone is trying to convince you that I'm out to get you, and me that you're out to get me. And I think that if you see that first person in your life, then take a picture of it and tell us about it. But if you saw it on CNN, man, take a pause and think, what are the motivations behind the people that would like you to feel that way? Is it because we're slowly starting to unify against some of the more bullshit elements of their plans for us? The debasement of our money, and the fact that our economy is decimated, for the working class, and that the banks seem to be able to, the elite in this country, politicos, big banks seem to be able to snap their fingers and put another trillion into the account. But you and I are out here fighting for scraps of paper. If you weren't born with a trust fund, some of us are doing pretty good at that paper scrap, and some of us are doing not as good, and some of us are bouncing back and forth. But if the top guy at the very top, 1%, can flick a button and get a trillion, and you got to kill yourself to get 1,000 a week, then you have to wonder about the integrity of that system. And could stoking these kind of tensions be what they're trying to get us to focus on, rather than unifying on the things that we need to do, obviously, which is resolve our differences in terms of climate and sustainability and work and pay balance and trade and spending and government and freedom balance. These are things which are a broad consensus is forming. And so it does certainly seem like someone would like to keep us fighting over trivialities rather than focusing on building a world that is not creating dependency on the powerful elite, right? So that's my thoughts for today on the political channel. Sorry for the long absence. Love to hear from you guys that are watching. I always appreciate the comments when they do come in. And I hope you'll tune in again. Thanks for hanging out for a while. There we go. Peace.